So most of the time, I'm the only guy talking, and except few times Cliff interacts. But I like these sessions to be as interactive as possible, so that we can get most of it, right? So please do try to share your comments or any observations you would like to share, and that way it kind of brings more ideas into our discussion. And thank you, Cliff, for always making these sessions little dynamic. So all right, so the we were reading about the conditions. I'll go over it from the beginning again. So extending the analogy of the small line and the big line, we talked about it, right? And we also discussed about how to use this analogy for our prayer. So when we pray, see, that's why Babaji always used to say, how much ever is going in your life, always show joy to the Lord, because what you express to the Lord is what comes back. If you say, oh, I have a lot of suffering, I have a lot of problems, because God being an omniscient, the concept of God is being omniscient, omnipresent. So, and that's such a state of being cannot discriminate good versus bad. It is beyond all opposites. It doesn't have that discernment. The discernment is of the mind, of the lower nature. The higher nature doesn't have to discern because it is part of everything. So that's why what we present to this higher as entity is very important. And some of these suggestions, they have a very depth to those suggestions. And Babaji is just not saying, as as it is said in the self-help books. Self-help books are always talking to the regular norms. But here, when the purport is very much different. It's the in-depth understanding of it is when we present ourselves to the Lord, it almost should come from the soul. And the soul, the nature of the soul is the joy. We must always present this joy. And then this joy comes back to you multifold. Whatever you present comes back in a bigger, right? So that's very important aspect of the prayer. And we also discuss about the ego starts to sublimate into humility. This ego has many ways. We don't know how the subtleties of the ego are attacking us. They go against us most of the time. But at the same time, ego is such a necessary, essential tool in us. Without ego, spiritual progress is not possible. We ask for something, we go for something only because the ego is prompting us to do it. Without ego prompting us, propel us in the direction of spirituality, it is not going to happen. So ego is an essential tool. But what is ego? We have to understand this idea of ego. Ego is not an attitude here we are referring to, because there is not any good translation from the Sanskrit word into English. It got translated as ego. In Sanskrit, it is called aham. Aham means the self identity. So here, ego should be understood as self identity. So today, what is my self identity? Who am I? Today, my answer of who am I based on my external attributes. I'm a male and female. That is the first attribute which starts with the ego, right? Someone asked me, what do you notice when you look at a person? The first thing you notice when you look at a person, and the psychology says the thing you notice when you look at a person, whether it's a male or a female. Okay. Then all the rest of the attributes follow. So similarly, when I say who am I'm basically thinking about all my identities which are reflected from the external world. So the first, my physical is also external, whether I am a male or female, whether I am tall or short, whether I am fat or thin. And then comes what my education is, from which culture I am, which country am I from, where am I born. See, all these are external attributes still so far we are talking about. Where am I born? What is my education? What do I possess? Do I have a house or a car? If the car, which house, which area? See, I mean, all these identities we are creating. And we are very much dearly protecting all these identities. Whenever an identity is formed, it becomes part of you. It becomes an extension of you. Everything which becomes an extension of you becomes more dear to you. I did a small write up and I think I shared with many of you. There, if you see why parents love their children, because the children are looked at as an extension of themselves. Even we love our pets more dearly because we see them as an extension of ourselves. Anything we see as an extension of ourselves, we are ready to give everything for that. So now the spirituality comes and says, make the God also as an extension of yourself. So who is making anything extension of the self is that ego. But God being such a subtle being, such a serene being, such a, uh, you know, what should I say? Like it doesn't have any attributes. Now, how can I make that which is unknowable as my extension? So that's why for that, the ego has to become softer, sublimate, almost nothing. Means all identities must go away so that I can form that identity, the real identity, which we are all made from. So that's why the spirituality goes much deeper. And ego is the tool. And another tool we have is the consciousness, the spectrum of consciousness. So when we talk about the conditions which are experienced at any chakra or anywhere, is only because of the consciousness. These conditions are coming to your awareness. Okay. So that's why we should not think of conditions as something higher. Okay. That's distinction, that clear distinction you have to make. Yesterday I shared one thing. Anything known, anything which is within the grips of your mind and consciousness is lower. But yet it is necessary. You get it? So it's very important to understand these subtleties and the nuances in our spiritual journey so that we can navigate ourselves better. So when you hear from people, people when they present, especially in heartfulness, oh, I had this condition, I had this experience, Babuji came to my mind, and Babaji said this to me, Chariji said this to me, Daji said this to me. All these are like unnecessary. I'm thinking by saying this, I'm adding some value to myself, but literally, I'm actually not understanding the spirituality in the right way. All these conditions, whatever you experience, is for yourself. It should not add any external value because I experience certain condition. Okay. So it's very, very, very essential for us to understand it's a journey, and anything you experience is lower than what we have to become. Anything you experience is my way lower than what we have to become. So there is a huge infinity ahead of us. And how can I boast anything about something about infinity behind? Right? I have still a lot of way to go. At the same time, this lot of way, all this journey can be traveled instantly. Okay. And those of you who understand the science, right? We say the light takes 8 minutes to travel from the sun to earth. But someone has presented another point of view. He said, I mean, according to the Einstein's theory, there is no relativity breaks when it comes to light. And if someone travels at the speed of light, there is no time. So that means the rays of the light from the sun should reach almost instantly to the earth. See, there are different perspectives, different ways of looking at the same thing. You see? So that's why it is very, very essential for us to understand this journey. Don't get overwhelmed by it, don't get bogged by it. Keep it natural, simple, and easy. If someone says, oh, I had this experience, Babuji came to me and said this to me, great, okay, but that is for you, not for me. So don't say, oh, I never get any Babuji in my meditations. Don't think like that. Because this journey is so subtle, so serene and formless. It's consciousness, it's inner awareness. These external dreamlike experiences have no meaning, if you ask me. They should not play. If there is an essence you can grasp out of it, grasp that essence out of that experience and move on. Don't get hooked onto it. Any experience I hooked onto it, my progress stops there. So that's why the conditions are giving you a general idea about your journey where you are. It makes you understand that the progress is happening, and that's all the significance of these conditions are. Okay.
Whether
Yes.
so so it does so we really should not be talking about anything when we have an experience.
It's okay to share, but if that sharing becomes an habit, the same experience, if you are sharing with 1,000 people, then it loses its meaning. Okay.
Okay.
If you keep talking about it, then you are stuck with that condition.
Oh, okay. So, you might mention that,
Uh-huh.
you know,
It's okay.
maybe
I
to a
mean,
sister.
you feel
Yeah,
good about it. You want to talk to the next Abhyasi you meet, or you want to share
right.
in some, a group session like this. But don't get hooked on to it.
And just let it go.
Just let it go
Okay.
because it's part of the journey. In a journey,
Part,
if I stop at a scenic place, and I want to remain there forever, the journey doesn't end. You're stuck,
okay.
right?
And it's also my journey, not
It's
necessarily
your
somebody
journey.
else's.
Not
Right.
necessarily it has to be my experience because you experienced it. Because Babaji experienced it, I need not experience.
And
It-
that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing that you haven't
right.
experienced.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there is nothing called, that you have to go through this. You have to go through this experience. Nothing of that sort. In an infinite journey, in an infinite dimensions, each one is exposed to a different dimension. Each one is exposed to a different area. Like I was giving this example, right? If you go to a city, you're not looking at the entire city and experiencing how the people are living in different areas are experiencing about their places, correct?
Right.
Even if you say, I'm living in Austin, how much of Austin you know? How much of Austin have you experienced? Mostly to the areas you are exposed to. So if I come to Austin and exposed to a different area, my experience of Austin is way different than yours, correct?
Yes. Yes. Mhm.
So the same thing with the spiritual experiences, right?
Thank you.
So it's such a simple thing, and we make it something, what should I say? We unnecessarily try to put salt and pepper into it. There's already enough salt and pepper over there. Okay. So even the slightest wrong thoughts create whiplash within. So because as we are becoming more and more subtle, that serenity can easily disturbed. So that's why the remembrance becomes our tool and the strength to deal with those disturbances. Okay. So from the region onwards, our consciousness is clear like a spring water, and your weakness appear more clearly to you. Any indication, inclination of the ego to dominate others feel torturous. So here, as the ego is becoming sublime, I, become the part of the flow. It's more and more acceptance is developed. See, there is a huge difference between acceptance and tolerance. When my ego is strong and gross and heavy, I have to tolerate the situations I don't like. But as the ego becomes sublime, the tolerance is not the idea anymore. It is more of an acceptance. That's how it is. Move on, pray and move on. So we don't resist anything because the moment you put the resistance, you have to use the lot of the power of the ego. Then ego has to assume, whenever you use the power of ego, ego has to assume a grosser form. So it falls away from that, it moves away from its subtle nature, sublime nature, right? So the state of insignificance. Recall the story I shared while writing the heart chakras. Babaji complimented my inner condition. My condition in those days was like a dog relaxing in the shade of a tree on a blazing hot afternoon. Babaji read my state and said, you should be in this condition 24 by 7. It was the condition of insignificance, abodhiyat, or subdued state. When you merge in the ninth chakra, you arrive at that condition of insignificance. In this state, one does not care about things like respect, disrespect, and so on. See, why? Because now I'm in an accepting mode. I'm in the flow. I don't want to disrupt the flow by saying, you better respect me, or I don't want, my mind doesn't want to get into any conflicts. So we'll find a middle way to deal with all the conflicts, not by resistance. So that's why when you are resisting, then there is a different way of dealing with things. When you are accepting, there is a different way of dealing with things. So I'm accepting does not mean I don't deal with the things. This is another fundamental thing we have to understand. Oh, I am in acceptance. So you can call me a fool or anything. I accept it. That's not how it works. So when I'm in acceptance, I deal with situations very differently, more effectively, in fact. I deal with the conflicts more effectively because now there is no resistance. And any situation which is causing disturbance, I have to deal with it, but in an accepting and a loving way. If that love means a slap, give a slap, but with love. Okay. So again, this acceptance does not mean what should I say, subject myself to the torture. That's not how the acceptance work, right? So in this state, one does not care about things like disrespect and so on. But you must deal with it. If there is a disrespect, you know how to deal with it. In acceptance, like I said, how you deal is different. So one is centered in thou, and that's where the attention rests. So there is a certain forgetfulness that accompanies this state, where you become less mindful of your abilities. Don't be alarmed, you don't lose them. Instead, you lose the burden of proving to yourself and others how good you are. So your skills become high performance tools at your disposal. So you use them when needed and then put them away. So the state of insignificance, because now the heart starts recognizing this grandiousness of the higher essence. Now, once I become insignificant, I am drawing all the capabilities, abilities of the higher. So here, it does not mean I forget my abilities because now I am not depending on my abilities because now I have better access, right? Suppose if I have to travel 400 miles. In the past, most of the monks in India, they traveled on foot from one end of the India to the other end, 2,000, 3,000 miles at a stretch. But today, I take a flight because now I have a better mode of communication, right? So similarly, here, now, instead of depending on my foot, there I am depending on the flight to take me from one end to another end at a shorter time with less effort. Same thing happens when I bring in this higher essence into my life. I can deal with all my life situations with less effort and efficiently in less time. I don't have to brood over things for days and days and lose my peace and lose my energy. So this is how the progress happens in our progress happens spiritually. At the same time, to deal with life, we become more and more efficient. So we don't have to spend so much energy to deal with life as we do it today. So I'll stop here for any comments, questions. Otherwise, we can get into meditation. All right. So let's get into meditation.